You wake up every day thinking life is against you. But what if the real enemy is your own voice? What if the thing holding you back isn't your situation, your past, or your lack of resources, but your addiction to complaining? Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they complain so much they never build the strength to act. And if that sounds uncomfortable, good. Because today we're not here for comfort. We're here for truth. You complain about your situation, but you tolerate it every day. You complain about people, but you keep them around. You complain about your results, but your habits stay the same. So what exactly are you expecting to change? Complaining feels productive. It gives you the illusion that you're addressing the problem. But in reality, you're feeding it. Every complaint is a quiet agreement with weakness. And the more you repeat it, the more it becomes your identity. Before we go deeper, if you want more content like this, raw, real, and built to sharpen your mindset, consider subscribing to this channel. You don't need motivation, you need discipline, perspective, and control. That's what we build here. Complaining is not random. It's a habit, a deeply conditioned response to discomfort. Something goes wrong, you react emotionally. Something feels hard, you avoid responsibility. Something doesn't go your way, you blame something external. And slowly, without realizing it, you train your mind to escape instead of endure. That's dangerous, because life doesn't reward escape. It rewards control. Every complaint you make feels small in the moment, but over time it becomes your identity, shaping how you think, act, and respond to everything. You tell yourself it's just stress or frustration, but deep down you know it's avoidance disguised as expression. The truth is, complaining gives you relief without progress, and that's why it's dangerous, because it feels like action but produces nothing. You don't need more time or better conditions, you need control over your reactions in moments that test your patience and discipline. When something goes wrong, you react instantly without thinking, reinforcing the same patterns that keep you exactly where you are. But imagine if you paused instead of reacting and chose your response with intention rather than emotion. That single shift changes everything, because control begins where reaction ends and awareness takes over. You are not weak because life is difficult, you feel weak because you keep giving your power away through uncontrolled responses. Every time you complain, you confirm to yourself that you are a victim of your circumstances instead of the architect of your actions. And that mindset slowly destroys your confidence, because you start believing you have no control. But control was always there, you just never trained it. Most people want change but refuse to let go of the habits that keep them comfortable, even when those habits are destroying them. Complaining is comfort because it requires no effort, no discipline, and no responsibility. But growth demands the opposite. It demands silence, focus, and action without excuses. When you stop speaking every frustration, something powerful happens. Your mind becomes sharper and your actions become more intentional. You begin to see solutions where you once saw problems, and opportunities where you once saw limitations. This is not about ignoring reality, it is about facing it without emotional weakness and responding with strength. Life will not become easier because you complain, it becomes manageable when you become stronger. Strength is built in moments where you choose discipline over reaction and action over expression. You don't rise by talking about your problems, you rise by confronting them without hesitation. Every excuse you repeat becomes a barrier that keeps you from moving forward even when the path is clear. You already know what you need to do, but you delay it by focusing on what you feel instead of what must be done. That delay is costing you more than you realize, because time moves whether you act or not. Imagine where you would be if you replaced every complaint with a decision to act immediately. That version of you exists, but it requires a level of responsibility most people avoid. Responsibility is heavy because it removes every excuse and forces you to face your own habits. But it is also powerful because it puts everything back in your control. You stop waiting for change and start creating it through consistent, disciplined action. No one is coming to fix your life, and that realization should not discourage you, it should wake you up. Because it means your results are entirely in your hands if you are willing to take control. The moment you stop blaming everything around you is the moment your power returns. You stop reacting and start thinking, you stop complaining and start building. This is where transformation begins, not in comfort, but in confrontation with your own patterns. You don't need motivation, you need standards that you refuse to break regardless of how you feel. Standards create discipline, and discipline creates results that no emotion can replace. If you continue as you are, nothing will change, and deep down you already know that. So the question is not whether life is hard, the question is whether you are willing to become stronger. Because strength is a choice repeated daily, not a feeling that appears when things are easy. You can continue complaining and remain where you are, or you can take control and become something more. And that decision starts now, not tomorrow, not later, but in this exact moment where awareness meets action. You feel the weight of your habits now, and it becomes harder to ignore the truth that your reactions have been shaping your reality more than your circumstances ever did. And somewhere deep inside you already know this, because every complaint leaves behind a quiet dissatisfaction that no distraction can fully erase. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself that the mind becomes what it constantly dwells on, and most people dwell on problems without ever building solutions. So ask yourself what you are feeding your mind daily, because whatever you repeat internally will eventually define your external life. You are not trapped by events, you are shaped by your interpretation of them, and that is where your power has always been waiting. When something goes wrong, your first instinct is to react emotionally, but Stoic discipline teaches you to pause before assigning meaning. That pause is not weakness, it is awareness taking control before emotion decides your next move. Epictetus taught that it is not events that disturb us but our judgments about them, and most people never question those judgments. They accept their first reaction as truth without realizing it is often shaped by fear, habit, and lack of discipline. But you can train yourself to see differently, to respond differently, and to act with clarity instead of impulse. This is where real power begins, not in controlling the world but in mastering your perception of it. Because when your perception changes, your actions follow, and when your actions change, your life begins to shift. You have spent too much time reacting and not enough time observing, and that imbalance keeps you stuck in cycles you claim to hate. Observation creates distance, and distance creates control, and control allows you to choose strength over weakness. Most people never reach this point because they are addicted to immediate emotional expression. They speak before they think, react before they understand, and complain before they act. And every time they do this, they reinforce the same patterns that hold them back. But you are here now, which means you are becoming aware, and awareness is the first step toward discipline. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and most complaints are born from imagined fears. You amplify situations in your mind until they feel overwhelming, even when they are manageable in reality. That mental exaggeration drains your energy before you even attempt to act. But when you face things directly without adding unnecessary emotion, they often lose their power over you. You begin to see challenges as tasks rather than threats, and that shift changes how you approach everything. Instead of resisting difficulty, you engage with it, and through engagement you build resilience. Resilience is not something you are born with, it is something you build through repeated exposure to discomfort without retreat. Every time you choose not to complain, you strengthen that resilience and reinforce a new identity. An identity built on controlled discipline and quiet confidence rather than noise and reaction. And that identity begins to influence how others see you, and more importantly, how you see yourself. Because self-respect is built through actions, not words, and every disciplined response adds to that foundation. You start trusting yourself more because you prove to yourself that you can handle situations without breaking. That trust becomes a source of inner stability that no external condition can easily shake. While others panic, you remain composed. While others complain, you remain focused. While others hesitate, you act. This is not because you are different, it is because you have trained yourself to respond differently. And that training comes from repetition, not from motivation or temporary bursts of inspiration. You must decide repeatedly to hold your standard even when it is uncomfortable. Because comfort will always try to pull you back into old habits that require no effort. But you are no longer interested in comfort, you are interested in growth, and growth demands discipline. There will be moments where everything in you wants to complain, to release frustration, to escape responsibility. But those moments are your greatest opportunities to build strength. Because every time you resist that urge, you prove that you are in control, not your emotions. And slowly those small victories accumulate into a mindset that is difficult to break. A mindset that does not crumble under pressure but adapts and moves forward regardless of conditions. This is what Stoic wisdom points toward, not suppression of emotion but mastery over it. You are allowed to feel, but you are not allowed to be controlled by what you feel. That distinction is what separates discipline from chaos and strength from weakness. You begin to respond with intention, choosing actions that align with your goals rather than your temporary emotions. And as this becomes your default way of operating, your results begin to reflect that internal shift. Because your life is always a reflection of your repeated actions, and your actions are driven by your mindset. Change the mindset and you change the pattern, change the pattern and you change the outcome. This is not immediate and it is not easy, but it is simple, and simplicity requires consistency. You must show up every day with the same commitment to control yourself regardless of circumstances. Some days will feel heavier than others, and those are the days that matter most. Because discipline is not tested when things are easy, it is tested when everything feels difficult. And in those moments you either reinforce your strength or return to your old habits. There is no neutral ground. Every decision is shaping who you are becoming. So you must become aware of those decisions and take responsibility for them without excuses. Excuses delay growth, and growth is the only path forward if you want a different life. You cannot think your way into change, you must act your way into it repeatedly. Action creates evidence, and evidence builds belief, and belief strengthens your identity. This is how transformation happens, not through words, but through consistent, disciplined behavior. And the more you act, the less you feel the need to complain, because you are too focused on progress. Progress replaces frustration because you can see movement even if it is slow. And slow progress is still progress, while constant complaining is stagnation. You begin to appreciate the process instead of resisting it because you understand its role in your growth. Nothing worthwhile is built without effort, and effort requires endurance. Endurance requires discipline, and discipline requires control over your reactions. Everything connects, and it all starts with a simple decision to stop complaining. That decision seems small, but its impact is massive because it shifts your entire approach to life. You stop looking for reasons why things are hard and start finding ways to handle them. And that shift alone separates those who remain stuck from those who move forward. You are not defined by what happens to you, but by how you choose to respond. That choice is always available, even when it feels like it is not. Because your mind may resist, but your awareness can override that resistance. You are learning to create that space between stimulus and response. And in that space lies your freedom, your power, and your ability to grow. Most people never develop that space because they never practice control. But you are building it now with every conscious decision to remain composed. That composure becomes your advantage in situations where others lose control. And over time, that advantage compounds into results that seem unreachable to those who still complain. They will wonder what changed without realizing it was your mindset all along. They will look for external explanations while ignoring the internal work required. But you will know because you lived through the process and built the discipline step by step. There is no shortcut to this, only consistent effort and honest self-reflection. You must be willing to confront your habits without denial and without justification. Because truth is the foundation of growth, and without it nothing changes. You cannot improve what you refuse to acknowledge. So you acknowledge your patterns, your reactions, and your tendencies without judgment, but with responsibility. And from that awareness you begin to rebuild yourself intentionally. Each day becomes an opportunity to practice control, to choose action, and to reject excuses. And with time those choices become automatic, forming a new default way of living. A way of living that aligns with Stoic principles of discipline, resilience, and inner strength. You are no longer controlled by circumstances but guided by your own standards. And those standards become the framework for every decision you make. You raise them gradually, refusing to settle for less than what you are capable of becoming. Because you now understand that your potential is directly tied to your discipline. And discipline is built through consistent action, not temporary motivation. You stop waiting to feel ready and start acting regardless of how you feel. That is the turning point where everything begins to change. Because action breaks the cycle of hesitation and replaces it with momentum. Momentum builds confidence, and confidence reinforces your willingness to act again. And this cycle continues, strengthening your mindset with each repetition. Until one day you realize that complaining no longer feels natural to you. It feels foreign, unnecessary, and even weak compared to the control you now possess. That is when you know you have changed, not because of what you say but because of how you respond. You have become someone who acts instead of reacts, who builds instead of complains. And that identity carries into every area of your life, influencing your results, your relationships, and your direction. You are no longer waiting for change, you are creating it through disciplined action every single day. And that is the difference between those who talk about growth and those who actually achieve it. You already know what needs to change, and the only reason it hasn't changed is because you keep negotiating with your own weakness every single day. You say you want discipline, but the moment pressure appears, you collapse into habits that feel familiar and call it stress instead of calling it lack of control. Stop lying to yourself, because your results are exposing you louder than your words ever could. Marcus Aurelius didn't have the luxury to complain, and neither do you if you are serious about becoming something more than average. He faced chaos, responsibility, and pressure, yet still chose control while you hesitate under situations far smaller than you admit. That contrast should bother you because it reveals how much you are underestimating your own capacity to endure. You are not tired, you are undisciplined, and there is a difference you keep ignoring because the truth demands effort. Every time you say you are overwhelmed, what you really mean is you have not trained your mind to handle discomfort. And discomfort is not your enemy, your avoidance of it is. You keep searching for easier paths, softer routines, and quick relief while expecting strong results, and that contradiction is destroying your progress. There is nothing complicated about your situation. You either act or you don't. You either endure or you escape. Everything else is noise you created to protect your ego from responsibility. Epictetus made it clear that no man is free who is not master of himself, and right now your reactions are proving who is really in control. Every impulse you follow without resistance weakens your authority over your own mind. And every time you justify it, you reinforce the same cycle that keeps you stuck. You don't need more advice, you need to start rejecting the version of yourself that keeps choosing comfort over growth. Because that version is costing you time, respect, and opportunity every single day. Look at your habits honestly, not emotionally, and you will see the pattern clearly. You delay what matters, you react without thinking, and you complain instead of adjusting. That is not bad luck, that is a lack of discipline repeated consistently. But the moment you accept that without excuses, everything becomes changeable. Because now the responsibility is yours, and with responsibility comes power. Power to act, power to endure, and power to rebuild yourself without waiting for permission. Seneca warned that while we waste time hesitating, life moves forward, and that is exactly what is happening to you right now. You are losing time not because you don't have enough, but because you are not using it with intention. Minutes turn into hours, hours into days, and suddenly you are looking back wondering why nothing has changed. But something has changed, you just didn't notice it. You became more comfortable with staying the same. And comfort is the most dangerous place to live when you know you are capable of more. Because it slowly convinces you that average is acceptable and excuses are justified. You start lowering your standards to match your habits instead of raising your habits to match your potential. And that is how people waste years without realizing they are repeating the same day over and over again. You cannot afford that, not if you are serious about growth, not if you are honest about what you want. This is the moment where you either confront yourself or continue avoiding the truth. There is no middle ground, because every delay strengthens the version of you that you claim to want to escape. You need to become ruthless with your habits, cutting off anything that weakens your focus or delays your action. Because discipline is not built by adding more, it is built by removing what does not serve you. Remove the excuses, remove the distractions, remove the unnecessary reactions. And what remains is clarity, and with clarity comes decisive action. You hesitate because you are attached to comfort, but growth demands detachment from what feels easy. That means doing what is required, even when it is inconvenient, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it is repetitive. Because repetition is where strength is built, not in moments of intensity, but in consistent, disciplined effort. You want results, but you avoid the process, and the process is the only path to those results. There is no shortcut, no hidden method, no secret formula that replaces discipline. You either build it or you don't, and your life will reflect that decision clearly. Every day you wake up with the same choice: to stay where you are or move forward with intention. And every day you delay, you are choosing to stay even if you tell yourself otherwise. Stop pretending that tomorrow will be different if you keep acting the same today. Change does not happen by intention, it happens by action repeated without negotiation. That means when your mind tells you to complain, you stay silent. When it tells you to delay, you act immediately. When it tells you to quit, you push further without discussion. You don't debate with weakness, you override it with discipline. Because the more you listen to it, the louder it becomes and the harder it is to ignore. But the more you resist it, the weaker it gets until it no longer controls you. This is how you take your power back, not through motivation but through control. Control over your thoughts, your reactions, and your actions regardless of how you feel. Feelings are temporary, but your decisions create permanent outcomes. So stop making permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. That habit alone is responsible for most of your setbacks. You choose comfort now and pay for it later with regret, frustration, and missed opportunities. Or you choose discipline now and earn strength, clarity, and progress over time. Those are your only options, whether you admit it or not. And deep down you already know which one you have been choosing. That awareness should not discourage you, it should push you to act differently starting now. Because the past does not define you unless you repeat it. And repetition is a choice you make every single day. Break that cycle and everything changes. Continue it and nothing will. You don't need a perfect plan, you need immediate action with whatever you have right now. Perfection is another excuse to delay, and delay is another form of avoidance. Start where you are with what you have and improve as you move forward. Progress creates clarity, not the other way around. You will not feel ready, you will become ready through action. That is the truth you keep avoiding because it removes your last excuse. There is no perfect moment, there is only the present and what you choose to do with it. Waste it and you reinforce your current reality, use it and you begin to change it. The choice is simple but not easy, and that is why most people fail. They want easy solutions to difficult problems, and that mindset keeps them stuck. You cannot have both comfort and growth, you must choose one and live with the consequences. And if you are honest with yourself, you already see where comfort has taken you. It has kept you in the same place, thinking the same thoughts, making the same excuses. That ends when you decide. It ends not before, not later, but now. Because now is the only moment you have control over, and control is what you have been avoiding. Take it back and prove to yourself that you are capable of more than your past habits. Because you are, but potential means nothing without disciplined action. And disciplined action begins the moment you stop complaining and start executing without hesitation. You say you want control, yet you still react to every inconvenience like it has authority over you, and that contradiction is exactly why you remain stuck in the same cycle. You are not being tested by life as much as you are being exposed by it, because pressure reveals what you have or have not trained within yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself daily, not because he lacked wisdom, but because he understood that discipline must be practiced repeatedly or it fades. And you have not been practicing, you have been reacting, hoping awareness alone would change you without consistent effort. But awareness without action is useless, it only makes you conscious of your weakness without correcting it. So now you must move beyond awareness into practice, because Stoic strength is built through doing, not thinking. You need structure, not motivation, because motivation disappears the moment things become difficult. Start with controlling your morning, because how you begin your day sets the tone for every decision that follows. Wake up without negotiation, without delay, without checking how you feel, because your feelings are not your authority. Stand up immediately and take control before your mind starts offering excuses disguised as reasonable thoughts. This is your first victory of the day, small but powerful, because it establishes who is in control. Then move into silence, not distraction, not noise, but intentional stillness, where you observe your thoughts without reacting. This is not passive, this is training your awareness to separate from impulse. You sit with your thoughts and watch them rise without attaching yourself to them, without acting on them. This is how you begin weakening the automatic reactions that have controlled you for so long. Epictetus emphasized the discipline of assent, which means not agreeing with every thought that enters your mind. Because not every thought deserves your belief, and most of your limitations come from accepting thoughts without questioning them. So you challenge them, you observe them, and you reject what does not serve your growth. This practice alone will begin to change how you respond throughout the day. Now, as you move into your responsibilities, you carry that awareness with you. Every interaction, every challenge, every inconvenience becomes an opportunity to practice control. Not later, not when it is easy, but in the exact moment when your instinct is to react. That is where discipline is forged, not in theory, but in real situations that test your patience. When something frustrates you, you pause before speaking, before reacting, before assigning meaning. You ask yourself if your response will make you stronger or weaker. If it weakens you, you discard it immediately without hesitation. This level of control is uncomfortable at first because it forces you to confront your habits directly. But discomfort is the price of growth, and avoiding it is the reason you have not progressed. You must lean into that discomfort deliberately because it is shaping your new identity. Seneca practiced voluntary discomfort to prepare himself for adversity, and you should do the same. Not to punish yourself, but to strengthen your tolerance for difficulty. Take cold showers, wake up earlier than necessary, remove small comforts that you rely on. Because when you train yourself to operate without comfort, you become resilient when comfort is removed. And life will remove it whether you are prepared or not. You either train for difficulty or you are controlled by it. There is no middle ground where you remain comfortable and become strong at the same time. Strength is built through resistance, and resistance requires effort that most people avoid. That is why most people remain average, not because they lack ability, but because they avoid discomfort. You are capable of more, but capability means nothing without execution. Execution requires discipline, and discipline requires consistency without excuses. You must repeat these practices daily, not when you feel like it, but especially when you do not. Because consistency is what transforms actions into habits and habits into identity. Your identity is not what you say it is what you repeatedly do. So if you continue reacting, complaining, and delaying, then that is who you are regardless of your intentions. But if you begin acting with control, discipline, and focus, then that becomes your new identity over time. And identity determines your outcomes because it influences every decision you make. This is why Stoic philosophy focuses on internal mastery rather than external results. Because once you control yourself, your results begin to align naturally with your actions. You stop chasing outcomes and start executing processes with precision and discipline. And through that execution, results follow as a consequence, not as the primary focus. This removes anxiety because you are no longer attached to outcomes, you are committed to action. Attachment creates frustration when things do not go as expected. But commitment to action creates stability because you are focused on what you can control. That control is where your power lies, and you must protect it at all costs. Do not give it away to distractions, opinions, or temporary emotions. Because every time you do, you weaken your ability to remain consistent. Consistency is your greatest weapon, and inconsistency is your greatest weakness. You must eliminate anything that disrupts your consistency, even if it feels uncomfortable to do so. This includes habits, people, and environments that encourage your old patterns. You cannot grow in the same environment that supports your weakness. Change requires separation from what keeps you stagnant. And that separation will feel uncomfortable because it removes familiarity. But familiarity is not always beneficial. It often keeps you trapped in cycles you claim to want to escape. You must be willing to outgrow your environment, your habits, and even your previous identity. Because growth demands change, and change requires letting go. Let go of the need to complain, let go of the need for validation, let go of the need for comfort. Replace those needs with discipline, awareness, and intentional action. This is not easy, and it is not supposed to be. If it were easy, everyone would do it, and discipline would have no value. But it is difficult, and that difficulty is what makes it powerful. Because very few people are willing to endure it consistently. That is where your advantage lies, not in talent, but in your willingness to do what others avoid. Every time you choose discipline, you separate yourself from those who choose comfort. And over time, that separation becomes significant. Your results improve, your mindset strengthens, and your confidence grows. Not because you feel better, but because you have proven to yourself that you can act regardless of how you feel. That proof builds unshakable self-trust, which is more valuable than any external validation. Because external validation is temporary, but self-trust remains with you in every situation. It allows you to move forward without hesitation because you trust your ability to handle whatever comes. That trust eliminates fear because fear thrives in uncertainty and doubt. But when you trust yourself, fear loses its control over your actions. You still feel it, but it does not stop you. This is the difference between courage and fearlessness. You do not eliminate fear, you act despite it with full awareness. and that awareness is sharpened through daily Stoic practices. Reflection becomes one of your most powerful tools. At the end of each day, you review your actions honestly without excuses. You identify where you reacted, where you complained, and where you lost control. Not to criticize yourself, but to improve your awareness for the next day. Because improvement requires feedback, and feedback requires honesty. Without honesty, you remain blind to your patterns, and without awareness, you cannot change them. So you confront yourself daily with truth, not comfort. And through that confrontation, you refine your behavior gradually. Each day, you aim to respond better than you did before. Not perfectly, but progressively, because progress compounds over time. Small improvements repeated consistently create massive transformation. But only if you remain disciplined and committed to the process. There will be days when you feel exhausted, unmotivated, and resistant. Those are the days that define you because they test your commitment to your standards. If you act on those days, you strengthen your discipline. If you give in, you reinforce your old habits. The choice is always yours, and that responsibility never disappears. You cannot escape it, you can only ignore it, and ignoring it comes with consequences. Those consequences appear as stagnation, frustration, and lack of progress. While discipline produces growth, clarity, and direction, you must decide which outcome you are willing to live with. Because your daily actions are creating that outcome whether you acknowledge it or not. This is why Stoic principles emphasize responsibility above all else. Because once you accept full responsibility, your excuses lose their power. And without excuses, you are left with action as your only option. That is where real growth begins, not in comfort but in responsibility. You stop waiting for change and start creating it through consistent, disciplined effort. Every decision becomes intentional, every action becomes purposeful. And your life begins to reflect that internal shift in ways you cannot ignore. You become more focused, more resilient, and more controlled. Not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. That is the goal, not an easy life, but a strong mind. A mind that does not break under pressure but adapts and moves forward. A mind that remains calm in chaos and focused in uncertainty. A mind that chooses action over complaint every single time. That is the standard you must build and maintain without compromise. Because the moment you lower it, you begin slipping back into old patterns. Standards require enforcement, not intention. You enforce them through action, through discipline, and through consistency. Not once, not occasionally, but every single day without exception. That repetition is what transforms you from who you are into who you are capable of becoming. And that transformation is entirely within your control if you are willing to commit. Most people will not commit, they will continue complaining, reacting, and avoiding responsibility. But you are choosing differently, and that decision sets you on a different path. A path that is difficult, demanding, and uncomfortable, but ultimately rewarding. Because it leads to growth, strength, and self-mastery. And self-mastery is the foundation of everything you want to achieve. Without it, you remain controlled by your environment, your emotions, and your habits. With it, you become the one in control, shaping your life intentionally. That is the difference between living by default and living by design. And you must choose which one you are willing to accept moving forward. You keep telling yourself you're trying, but your results expose the truth that you are negotiating with effort instead of committing to it fully. You want the image of discipline without the reality of sacrifice, and that illusion is keeping you weak. Stop dressing up your inconsistency with excuses, because inconsistency is still failure repeated in smaller doses. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that waste no more time arguing what a good man should be, and that message is aimed directly at you right now. Because you spend more time thinking about change than actually executing it, and thinking does not build strength. Action does, and you are avoiding it when it becomes uncomfortable. You claim you are serious, yet your habits are casual, and casual effort produces average results every single time. You cannot outthink a lack of discipline, and you cannot plan your way out of weak execution. You either do the work or you don't, and your life will reflect that decision without bias. There is no hidden advantage you are missing, only actions you are refusing to take. That truth is simple, but you resist it because it removes every excuse you rely on. You want progress, but you protect your comfort, and those two cannot coexist. Epictetus taught that if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish, and that means doing what others avoid without seeking approval. But you hesitate because you care too much about perception and not enough about progress. You delay action because you fear discomfort and judgment while your potential slowly fades in the background. Every day you wait, you are choosing stagnation, and that choice compounds over time into regret. Regret is not sudden, it is built through repeated inaction disguised as patience. You are not being patient, you are being passive, and passivity is costing you more than failure ever would. Failure teaches you something, passivity teaches you nothing. And right now you are learning nothing because you are not fully engaging with what you need to do. You keep one foot in effort and one foot in comfort, and that position guarantees you go nowhere. You must choose completely because half commitment produces zero results. There is no reward for trying halfway, there is only consequence. Seneca warned that we suffer more from indecision than from action, and your hesitation is draining more energy than execution ever will. You think acting will exhaust you, but delaying is what is exhausting you mentally and emotionally. You carry the weight of undone tasks and avoided responsibilities and call it stress. But it is not stress, it is avoidance accumulating pressure. Remove the avoidance and the pressure begins to fade because action creates relief. You have been running from effort while complaining about the results of not putting in effort. That cycle is self-created, and it continues because you allow it. Break it by doing what you have been avoiding immediately without overthinking. Not tomorrow, not later, not when you feel ready, but now. Because readiness is built through action, not before it. You will never feel fully prepared, and waiting for that feeling is another excuse. You must act in uncertainty and build confidence through repetition. Confidence is not given, it is earned through evidence of your own actions. And right now your evidence is weak because your actions are inconsistent. That can change, but only if you stop negotiating with yourself. No more internal debates, no more delays, no more emotional excuses. When something needs to be done, you do it immediately without questioning. That is discipline in its raw form, and it is uncomfortable because it removes your freedom to avoid. But that is exactly why it works, because it forces you into action. Freedom without discipline leads to chaos, and that is where you have been operating. You give yourself too many options and then choose the easiest one every time. Reduce your options, remove the possibility of avoidance, and commit to execution. Make it non-negotiable, because if it is optional, you will choose comfort. You have proven that already through your patterns. So change the structure, not just your intention. Structure forces discipline when motivation disappears. And motivation always disappears when things become difficult. You must be prepared for that moment, because that is when most people quit. You will feel resistance, you will feel doubt, you will feel the urge to stop. And in that exact moment, you either break your pattern or reinforce it. That moment defines you more than any plan you create. Because plans are easy, execution under pressure is what matters. You cannot build strength in comfort, and you cannot grow without resistance. Stop trying to make everything easier and start making yourself stronger. That shift changes everything, because now difficulty becomes useful instead of something to avoid. You begin to seek challenges because they build your capacity. And capacity determines how much you can handle without breaking. Right now your capacity is limited because you have not trained it. But it expands every time you push beyond your current limits. Not once, not occasionally, but consistently without exception. Consistency is what you lack, and it is the one thing you cannot avoid if you want results. You can have talent, you can have knowledge, you can have opportunity. But without consistency, none of it matters. Consistency is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. And you keep stepping off that bridge every time things become uncomfortable. Stay on it no matter what, because the only way forward is through. There is no shortcut around discipline, only delays that cost you time. Time is the one resource you cannot recover, and you are wasting it carelessly. You act like you have more than you do, and that mindset keeps you relaxed when you should be urgent. Urgency creates focus, and focus drives action. You need to feel the weight of your wasted time, not to discourage you, but to wake you up. Because comfort has made you passive, and passivity has made you stagnant. That ends when you decide to operate with intensity and intention. Not extreme bursts followed by inconsistency, but steady, disciplined effort daily. That is how real progress is built, not through spikes of motivation but through controlled repetition. You do not need to feel inspired, you need to feel responsible. Responsibility removes excuses and replaces them with action. You either accept it or you continue blaming everything else. But blaming will never move you forward, it only keeps you stuck. Take ownership of everything, your habits, your reactions, your results. Because once you own it, you can change it. And until you own it, you will keep repeating it. There is no growth without ownership and no progress without discipline. These are not optional principles, they are requirements. Ignore them and you stay where you are, follow them and you move forward. The choice is simple, but your actions determine which side you are actually on. Stop identifying with your struggles and start identifying with your actions. Because your actions define you, not your intentions. Intentions mean nothing without execution, and execution is what you avoid. Face that truth without softening it, because it is the only way to improve. You are capable of more, but capability is meaningless without application. Apply yourself fully or accept the results you are getting. There is no middle ground where you improve without effort. Effort is the price, and you have been underpaying for too long. Now the cost is higher because of the time you have already wasted. But you can still pay it through discipline and consistent action starting now. Not perfectly but relentlessly, without stopping every time it becomes difficult. Because difficulty is part of the process, not a signal to quit. You have been reading it wrong, interpreting resistance as a reason to stop, instead of recognizing it as a sign that you are moving in the right direction. Reframe that and your entire approach changes. You stop fearing effort and start embracing it as necessary. And that mindset will separate you from everyone still choosing comfort. They will continue complaining while you continue building. They will stay stuck while you move forward. And the difference will not be talent or luck, it will be discipline. That is what you must build, protect, and maintain without compromise. Because once you lose it, you fall back into the same patterns that kept you stuck. Guard it with your actions daily, because discipline is not permanent. It requires constant reinforcement through behavior. And that behavior starts now with the next decision you make. Not later, not tomorrow, but right now, where your habits are being tested. Choose action, choose discipline, and prove to yourself that you are done being average. You feel it now, that pressure building inside you, because truth has a way of stripping away every excuse you have been hiding behind. So answer this honestly without softening it. How many times have you promised yourself change and still repeated the same habits? How many mornings did you wake up with intention only to fall back into comfort before the day even challenged you? Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and your thoughts have been colored by avoidance. You think in ways that protect comfort instead of demanding growth, and that thinking is shaping everything you do. So engage with this, do not just listen, question yourself in real time while you hear this. Are your actions today aligned with the person you claim you want to become, or are they aligned with who you have always been? Because you cannot hold both identities at once, one must replace the other. And replacement requires rejection, not adjustment, not moderation, but complete rejection of your weaker patterns. Epictetus taught the discipline of desire, meaning you must train yourself to want what is within your control and reject what is not. Yet you keep desiring ease, recognition, and immediate results while avoiding effort, discipline, and patience. That imbalance creates frustration because you are chasing outcomes without committing to the process. Reverse that desire and everything changes. Desire effort, desire discipline, desire challenge, desire growth. When you want what is difficult, you become dangerous because you are no longer controlled by comfort. And that is where most people lose, because they cannot tolerate sustained discomfort. So let me ask you again, what do you actually want, comfort or growth? Because your habits are answering that question daily. You cannot lie to yourself here, because your behavior is evidence. Seneca practiced negative visualization, imagining loss, hardship, and difficulty so he would not be shocked by reality. But you avoid thinking about difficulty, you expect ease, and then complain when reality does not match your expectation. That expectation is your weakness because it creates resistance to what is. Remove the expectation and you remove the frustration. Now everything becomes something to handle, not something to complain about. Engage with that idea deeply, because it changes how you see every challenge. Nothing is unfair, it simply is, and your role is to respond with strength. That is the Stoic lens, and it removes emotional noise from your decisions. Without that noise, you act faster, think clearer, and move with purpose. Now ask yourself, how often do you let emotions decide your actions instead of your principles? How many times have you known the right thing to do but chose the easier option? That gap between knowledge and action is where your weakness lives. Close that gap and you become unstoppable. Leave it open and you remain stuck. There is no middle ground where you improve without confronting that gap directly. So you confront it now, not later, not when it feels convenient, but now. You stop asking how you feel and start asking what must be done. That question alone will change your behavior if you answer it honestly. Because what must be done is usually clear, but you avoid it because it requires effort. Effort is not your enemy, it is your path forward. Without it, nothing changes, and you already know that from experience. So why are you still resisting it? That is the question you need to sit with, not avoid, not distract yourself from, but face directly. Because the answer will expose your habits, your fears, and your excuses. And once exposed, they lose their power if you choose to act differently. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that if something is difficult, it does not mean it is impossible. Yet you interpret difficulty as a signal to slow down, stop, or complain. That interpretation is conditioning, not truth. Change the interpretation and you change your response. Now difficulty becomes a test instead of a barrier. And tests are meant to be faced, not avoided. Each one builds your capacity if you engage with it properly. But only if you stop reacting emotionally and start responding intentionally. That requires presence, awareness, and control, all of which you must practice daily. This is not theory, this is execution in real time. Every moment you are challenged. You either apply it or you fall back into your default patterns. And your default patterns are what you are trying to escape. So you cannot afford to relax into them anymore. You must stay aware even when it feels exhausting, because awareness is your leverage. Without it, you operate on autopilot, and autopilot leads you back to where you started. You want change, then you must remain conscious of your actions consistently. That is the cost of growth, sustained attention, and disciplined execution. Now engage with this deeply. What are you doing today that is actively moving you forward? Not thinking, not planning, not talking, but doing. If your answer is unclear, then your direction is weak. Clarity comes from action, not intention. Take action and clarity will follow. Avoid action and confusion remains. This is why you feel stuck, because you are waiting to feel certain before you move. But certainty is built through movement, not before it. Move first, adjust later. That is how progress works. You refine through experience, not through endless thinking. So stop overthinking and start executing, even if it feels imperfect. Imperfection in action is better than perfection in delay every single time. Because action produces results, feedback, and growth. Delay produces nothing but frustration and wasted time. You have wasted enough time already, and you feel that weight whether you admit it or not. Let that weight push you forward instead of holding you back. Use it as fuel, not as an excuse to stay where you are. Because staying where you are is the real risk, not failure. Failure teaches you something, stagnation teaches you nothing. And right now you need to learn, not remain comfortable in what you already know. Growth requires exposure to what challenges you, not repetition of what feels easy. So put yourself in positions that demand more from you. More focus, more effort, more discipline, more control. Because that is how you expand your limits. And your limits are not fixed, they are shaped by your actions. Act small, remain small, act with intensity, grow beyond what you thought possible. That is the reality you are stepping into if you commit fully. But commitment means removing every backup plan that leads back to comfort. No more fallback into old habits, no more excuses disguised as logic. Just action repeated daily until it becomes who you are. Because who you are is built through what you repeatedly do. And what you repeatedly do is still within your control. So take control now, not gradually, not eventually, but immediately. Because every moment you delay, you reinforce the version of yourself you claim to outgrow. Break that pattern here and now with decisive action. And keep breaking it until it no longer exists within you. Right now, this is the moment where most people stop, not because they cannot continue, but because continuing requires a level of honesty they are not willing to face. So stay with this and do not drift, because what comes next is where real separation begins. You are not struggling because life is difficult, you are struggling because you have not committed fully to controlling yourself under pressure. That is the truth you keep circling but avoiding because it demands immediate change, not gradual intention. Epictetus said, "Do not explain your philosophy, embody it," and right now you are explaining more than you are executing. You talk about discipline, you think about growth, you imagine success, but your actions remain inconsistent. That contradiction is why you feel stuck, because your mind and behavior are not aligned. Alignment only happens when your actions match your standards without exception. Not sometimes, not when you feel like it, but every single time you are tested. Because every test is revealing whether you are serious or just interested. Interest fades under pressure, seriousness remains. So which one are you proving through your behavior right now? You cannot fake this, because pressure exposes truth instantly. When things get hard, do you tighten your focus or do you look for escape? When you are tired, do you continue or do you justify stopping? When you are uncomfortable, do you lean in or step back? Those answers define you more than any goal you set. And deep down you already know your answers. That awareness is uncomfortable, but it is necessary because it shows you exactly what must change. You do not need new information, you need stronger execution. Execution is where your transformation is waiting and you keep delaying it. You delay by thinking, you delay by planning, you delay by waiting for the perfect moment. But there is no perfect moment, there is only opportunity disguised as discomfort. And you keep missing it because you are focused on how it feels instead of what it requires. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that you have power over your mind, not outside events, yet you keep giving outside events control over your reactions. You let small inconveniences shift your mood, your focus, and your energy. That is not lack of time, that is lack of control. Control is built when you decide that nothing external will dictate your internal state. Not people, not situations, not outcomes. Because once they do, you lose your stability. And without stability, you cannot be consistent. Consistency requires emotional control, and emotional control requires awareness. You must see your reactions as they happen, not after the fact. Because once you see them, you have the ability to interrupt them. That interruption is where discipline begins. Without interruption, you operate on habit, and your habits are what you are trying to change. So you must stay present enough to catch yourself in the act. Catch the moment you want to complain. Catch the moment you want to delay. Catch the moment you want to quit. And override it immediately without discussion. That is the practice, and it must be repeated constantly. Not once, not occasionally, but every time. Because repetition rewires your default response. Eventually, what once required effort becomes automatic. But until then, you must remain intentional. Seneca spoke about rehearsing adversity so that when it arrives, it feels familiar. You have not been rehearsing, you have been avoiding. So when difficulty appears, it feels overwhelming instead of expected. Change that by exposing yourself to controlled discomfort daily. Do things that require effort without immediate reward. Train your mind to operate without needing comfort or validation. Because reliance on comfort weakens your ability to endure. And endurance is required for anything meaningful. You cannot build anything valuable without sustained effort. And sustained effort requires discipline beyond emotion. Emotion fluctuates, discipline remains. That is why discipline must become your foundation. Everything else builds on top of it. Without it, your progress will always collapse under pressure. With it, you become stable regardless of conditions. That stability is what allows you to keep moving forward. While others stop, you continue. While others complain, you execute. While others hesitate, you decide. That difference compounds over time into results that seem impossible to those who never built discipline. But you know the truth behind it because you lived it. You built it through small decisions repeated consistently. Through moments where you chose action instead of comfort. Through situations where you stayed focused instead of reacting. Through days where you worked without feeling motivated. That is the process, and it does not change. There is no stage where you stop practicing discipline. It is a continuous requirement, not a temporary phase. The moment you relax, it begins to fade. So you must protect it daily through your actions. Not by thinking about it, but by applying it. Application is everything. Without it, knowledge is wasted. You already know enough to change your life. The problem is not knowledge, it is execution. And execution begins with your next decision. Right now, in this moment, what will you do differently? Not tomorrow, not later, but immediately after this. Will you act or will you delay again? That choice is the turning point, not this message, not your intentions, but your action. Because action is the only thing that creates change. Everything else is preparation or avoidance. And you have prepared enough. Now it is time to execute without hesitation, without excuses, without delay. Because the longer you wait, the harder it becomes. Not because it is actually harder, but because your habits become stronger. Break them now while you are aware. Because awareness without action fades quickly. And once it fades, you return to autopilot. You cannot afford that, not if you are serious about growth. So stay conscious, stay disciplined, and act immediately. Prove to yourself through your behavior that this time is different. Not by what you say, but by what you do next. Because what you do next is who you are becoming. And who you become is entirely in your control if you decide to take it seriously starting now. Every moment you spend complaining is a moment you are not building, not adjusting, not correcting, not improving. It is time spent rehearsing powerlessness. And repetition always shapes identity. So if you keep repeating complaint, don't be surprised when your mind starts to identify as stuck. The truth is simple and uncomfortable. You are not trapped by your circumstances as much as you are reinforced by your reactions to them. Two people can face the same pressure, the same stress, the same uncertainty, and one uses it as fuel while the other uses it as a reason to stop. The difference is not intelligence. It is not opportunity. It is not even luck. It is responsibility. At some point, you have to take ownership of your response. Not just when things are easy, not just when motivation is high, but especially when nothing feels like it is working in your favor. Because that is where discipline is proven. Not in theory, but under pressure. You do not grow by talking about resistance. You grow by moving through it. And every time you complain instead of acting, you reinforce the exact behavior you say you want to escape. You strengthen hesitation. You strengthen delay. You strengthen avoidance. That is why nothing changes. You already have enough awareness. You already know what is wrong. You already know what needs to be fixed. The missing piece is not insight. It is interruption. The interruption of the pattern. The moment you feel the urge to complain, that is the exact moment where a different choice is available. Not later. Not after you finish expressing frustration. But right there in the moment where reaction is forming. You can either reinforce the habit of complaint or interrupt it with action. That is the real battle. And it is quiet. No one sees it. No one applauds it. No one validates it. But it is the exact place where your life changes. Because your external results are just a reflection of your internal responses repeated over time. So if your life feels stuck, look at what you repeat when things get uncomfortable. Look at what you default to when things don't go your way. Look at what you say when effort feels heavy. That is not just a reaction. That is training. And you have been training your mind every single day. The question is, what have you been training it to become? A complainer or a builder? A reactor or a creator? Someone who explains or someone who executes? Because you cannot be both at the same time. At some point, explanation has to end. At some point, awareness has to turn into behavior. At some point, understanding has to become discipline. Otherwise, it is just mental noise with no direction. So stop waiting for conditions to improve before you change your response. Conditions were never the barrier. Your response was. And that is actually good news because it means control has always been closer than you thought. You do not need permission to stop complaining. You do not need a better environment. You do not need everything to calm down before you take responsibility for your reaction. You can start right now, in this moment, not by fixing everything, but by refusing to feed the mindset that keeps you stuck. Because every time you refuse complaint and choose action instead, you are not just solving a task, you are rewriting identity. You are teaching yourself that discomfort does not control you. You are teaching yourself that frustration does not lead you. You are teaching yourself that pressure does not break you into excuses. And slowly, quietly, consistently, that becomes your new default. Not someone who reacts emotionally to life, but someone who responds deliberately to it. That is where power actually comes from. Not control over everything outside you, but control over what you allow inside you. Your thoughts, your reactions, your decisions. And once that begins to shift, your life starts to shift with it. So understand this clearly before this ends. Complaining will not build your future. It will not create discipline. It will not bring opportunity. It will only keep you emotionally involved in a life you refuse to improve. And at some point, you have to decide that emotional involvement is not enough anymore. You either live in reaction or you live in responsibility. You either stay in the cycle or you step out of it. There is no third option. So here is the final truth. Nobody is coming to remove your excuses. Nobody is coming to force you into discipline. Nobody is coming to stop you from repeating the same patterns. That responsibility has always been yours, and it still is. So when this message ends, don't just feel it. Don't just agree with it. Don't just reflect on it. Act on it. Right after this, do something that proves to yourself you are no longer led by complaint. Move your body. Start the task. Fix what you've been avoiding. Take the first step you've been postponing. Do it while it is still uncomfortable, because that is the only time it actually counts. And if you feel the urge to complain again, recognize it for what it is, a habit trying to pull you back into comfort. Then refuse it, not with emotion but with action, because that is where your transformation begins. Not in what you understand, not in what you say, but in what you choose to do next. So stop complaining, start building, and don't stop when it gets inconvenient, because that is exactly where your life begins to change. Before you go back to your day, take a second and lock in what you've just experienced. If this message hit you, don't just keep it in your mind and move on like it never happened. That's how change gets lost. Subscribe to this channel, because this is where you stay reminded of what discipline actually requires when motivation fades and excuses show up. And don't stay silent on this. Drop a comment right now and write what you are going to change starting today. Not what you understand, what you are going to do differently. Because the moment you write it, you make it real.